The North American P-51's Mustang is often celebrated as one of the most iconic fighter aircraft of World War II. Yet, beneath the legend lies an interesting contradiction. By many pilot accounts, the P-51 was not an exceptional dogfighter in the traditional sense. It was not the most agile aircraft in close quarter combat, nor could it easily outturn opponents like the Spitfire or the Bf-109. So how did this supposedly poor dogfighter become one of the most decisive aircraft of the war? The answer lies not in its agility, but in its speed, range, and versatility. The Mustang redefined what air superiority meant, shifting the focus from short, twisting duels to long-range dominance and strategic escort missions. This essay explores how a plane with limited dogfighting prowess became the linchpin of Allied air success, altering the course of aerial warfare through strategy, engineering, and endurance. Before the Mustang entered combat, the skies over Europe were dominated by German fighters like the Messerschmitt Bf 109 and Focke-Wulf FD 190. These aircraft excelled at short-range interception and defensive combat, effectively protecting German airspace. The Allies, meanwhile, struggled to maintain long-range escort for their bombers deep into enemy territory. Aircraft such as the P-47 Thunderbolt and the British Spitfire were formidable fighters, but lacked the fuel capacity to reach Berlin or beyond. As a result, Allied bombers suffered catastrophic losses to Luftwaffe interceptors. The war in the air was, at this stage, one of attrition. Whoever could maintain sustained pressure on enemy industry and air defences would prevail. What the Allies needed was not necessarily the best dogfighter, but an aircraft capable of escorting bombers to and from their targets without refueling. The P-51 Mustang would eventually fill this crucial strategic void. Interestingly, the Mustang was not initially an American project. It was born out of a British request in 1940 for a new fighter built by North American Aviation. The British sought an aircraft superior to the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk, but the initial versions of the P-51, equipped with the Allison engine, were disappointing at high altitudes. They were fast and stable at low levels, but lost power above 15,000 feet. Altitudes where most aerial combat and bomber escort missions occurred. It wasn't until the British tested the Mustang with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine that the aircraft's potential became clear. This combination transformed the P-51 into a high-altitude performer, capable of matching or exceeding German fighters in climb and speed. The redesigned Mustang with the Merlin engine would soon emerge as a war winner, not because of agility, but because of its endurance and adaptability. Dogfighting, in the romanticized sense of two aircraft circling tightly in a ballet of aerial combat, was not where the Mustang shined. Aircraft like the Spitfire, Yak-3, or Zero could outturn the P-51 in close quarters. Mustang pilots who tried to engage in turning dogfights often found themselves at a disadvantage. However, by 1943-44, the concept of air superiority had evolved. Victory in the skies no longer relied solely on turning ability, but on speed, altitude, and tactical positioning. The P-51 excelled in these areas. It was fast, had an excellent dive rate, and could retain energy through vertical maneuvers, attributes that allowed skilled pilots to dictate when and how to engage. Rather than getting trapped in turning battles, Mustang pilots used boom and zoom tactics, diving from altitude, striking swiftly, and climbing back to safety. In this way, the P-51's so-called weakness became irrelevant in the larger strategic picture. The true strength of the P-51 Mustang lay in its incredible operational range. equipped with external fuel tanks. The Mustang could escort bombers all the way from Britain to Berlin and back, something no other Allied fighter could do effectively in 1943. This capability fundamentally changed the nature of the air war. For the first time, Allied bombers could reach Germany's industrial heartland with fighter protection throughout the mission. The Luftwaffe's defensive strategy, which had relied on attacking unescorted bomber streams, began to crumble. The Mustang's long legs allowed it to loiter over enemy territory, pursuing retreating German fighters, even after the bombing runs. In this sense, the P-51's range, not its agility, was what broke the Luftwaffe's back. By neutralizing German air power, the Mustang paved the way for the Allied strategic bombing campaign that crippled Germany's war industry. The P-51's primary wartime role was not as a dogfighter, but as a bomber escort. Flying alongside B-17 the Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators, Mustangs shielded these lumbering bombers from Luftwaffe attacks. Prior to the Mustang's arrival, bomber losses were unsustainable. Some missions saw casualty rates exceeding 25%. With the Mustang's introduction in late 1943, those numbers plummeted. P-51 pilots learned to fly in flexible formations, moving ahead of bomber groups to intercept enemy fighters before they could attack. Their combination of speed, altitude performance, and range meant they could chase German interceptors far beyond the front lines. This offensive, defensive flexibility made the Mustang indispensable. It allowed the Allies to maintain a relentless air offensive that drained the Luftwaffe's experienced pilots and limited Germany's ability to produce and deploy new aircraft effectively. By mid-1944, the Luftwaffe was in disarray. Continuous pressure from long-range Allied escorts, like the P-51, forced German fighter units to engage over their own territory, leading to heavy losses of pilots and planes. Unlike the Allies, Germany could not replace its trained airmen quickly. The Mustang's ability to extend air dominance deep into enemy airspace ensured that the Luftwaffe was constantly on the defensive. When the Allies launched D-Day in June 1944, German air resistance was minimal, partly because the Mustang and other escorts had already destroyed the Luftwaffe's offensive capacity. The P-51 effectively stripped the Luftwaffe of the strategic initiative, turning the once proud German Air Force into a reactive and depleted force. Its contribution was not measured in dogfight statistics, but in how it reshaped the entire balance of air power over Europe. While the P-51 wasn't a great dogfighter, it was an excellent energy fighter. This meant it could climb, dive, and retain energy better than most opponents. Its laminar flow wing design minimized drag, allowing for greater speed and longer glide distance in combat maneuvers. Experienced pilots used these traits to control engagements, attacking only when they had an advantage and avoiding fights where they didn't. The Mustang's high dive speed allowed it to break off combat safely, regroup, and strike again. This energy-based combat philosophy marked a shift from traditional turn and burn dogfighting to hit and run tactics that favored disciplined pilots. In the hands of skilled aviators, the P-51's supposed limitations became tools of dominance, demonstrating that superior tactics and energy management could overcome raw maneuverability. The P-51's success was not just a matter of engineering, but also of training and tactics. Allied pilots underwent rigorous programs focused on situational awareness, teamwork, and discipline. They were taught never to engage in unnecessary turning battles with more maneuverable opponents. Instead, Mustang pilots used altitude and energy to their advantage. Flying in coordinated flights, they could cover one another and execute slashing attacks on enemy formations. American doctrine emphasized the concept of air superiority through control of the engagement, meaning the pilot decided when to fight and when to disengage. The Mustang's superior range and fuel efficiency gave them the luxury of time and endurance, something German pilots often lacked. As the war dragged on, the Allies' ability to train new Mustang pilots quickly, combined with effective combat doctrine, ensured that even though the aircraft wasn't the best dogfighter, it was flown in ways that maximized its strategic potential. The transformation of the Mustang into a world-class performer hinged on one critical technological advancement: the installation of the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. This engine, already famous for powering the Spitfire and Hurricane, provided the high-altitude performance the Mustang previously lacked. With the Merlin, the P-51 could reach speeds of over 440 mph and maintain power above 30,000 feet, an altitude where many German fighters struggled. The improved engine also gave the Mustang a remarkable operational ceiling and allowed it to match or surpass the climb rate of most Axis aircraft. Combined with efficient aerodynamics and an advanced cooling system, the P-51 became not only fast but reliable. This engineering synergy made it ideal for long missions over hostile territory. In essence, the Merlin engine was the heart that turned an average design into an extraordinary war-winning machine, proving that technological innovation often outweighs raw agility in determining combat effectiveness. Beyond its physical performance, the P-51 Mustang had a profound psychological effect on both sides of the war. For Allied bomber crews, seeing Mustangs flying alongside their formations meant protection and hope. Morale among airmen rose significantly once they knew Mustangs would escort them all the way home. For the Germans, however, the sight of Mustangs high above their homeland was demoralizing. It symbolized the loss of control over their own skies. Luftwaffe pilots realized they could no longer retreat safely, as Mustangs often pursued them deep into German airspace. The psychological warfare effect was immense. Fear, exhaustion, and the erosion of confidence plagued the Luftwaffe. Thus, even if the Mustang was not the tightest turning dogfighter, it won a different kind of battle: the battle of morale. The war is as much about the spirit of the combatants as it is about machinery, and in this realm, the P-51 was unmatched. The P-51's most critical contribution was enabling the success of the Allied strategic bombing campaign. Before the Mustang, bombing runs into Germany were near suicidal ventures. The Luftwaffe's interceptors would tear through unescorted bomber formations. With the arrival of the P-51, everything changed. The Mustangs allowed bombers to penetrate deep into German industrial regions, hitting targets such as oil refineries, ball bearing plants, and aircraft factories, with greatly reduced losses. By maintaining persistent air cover, the P-51 ensured that German production and fuel supplies were systematically crippled. As the bombing intensified, the German war machine began to falter. Factories couldn't rebuild fast enough, transport systems collapsed, and fuel shortages grounded much of the Luftwaffe. The Mustang's endurance made these sustained operations possible. Without it, the Allied bombing offensive might have failed to achieve its devastating strategic impact, prolonging the war indefinitely. Although the Mustang is most famous for its role in Europe, it also made significant contributions in the Pacific. There, long distances between islands made range even more crucial. The P-51's long reach allowed it to escort B-29 Super Fortress bombers on missions to Japan, a feat few other fighters could accomplish. In these missions, Mustangs provided vital protection against remaining Japanese fighters and carried out ground attacks themselves when needed. The aircraft's reliability and speed proved invaluable in such extended operations. Though the P-51 did not face as many high-altitude adversaries in the Pacific as in Europe, its ability to sustain long sorties and return safely demonstrated its unmatched versatility. The Mustang's performance in both major theaters of war solidified its reputation not merely as a fighter, but as a symbol of technological and tactical dominance that spanned the globe. After World War II, the P-51 Mustang continued to serve in various air forces around the world, including during the Korean War. Its post-war success underscored its adaptability. The Mustang's design philosophy, emphasizing speed, range, and energy over tight maneuverability, influenced generations of future fighters, including early jet designs. Its impact went beyond the battlefield, shaping how engineers and strategists viewed air superiority. The lessons learned from the Mustang era made clear that range, fuel efficiency, and altitude performance often outweigh sheer agility in achieving strategic air dominance. The aircraft became a symbol of Allied innovation and determination. Even decades later, aviation historians and enthusiasts regard the P-51 as one of the most beautifully balanced fighter designs ever built, not because of how well it turned, but because of how well it fit the larger needs of the war effort. The P-51 Mustang may not have been the best dogfighter in the traditional sense, but it redefined what it meant to be a great fighter aircraft. Its success was measured not in tight turns or acrobatic duels, but in strategic outcomes. Escorted bombers reaching their targets, enemy air forces grounded, and the skies over Europe secured. It combined engineering brilliance with tactical innovation, endurance, and versatility. The Mustang's victory was a victory of foresight, understanding that wars are won not by isolated dogfights, but by control of the broader airspace and the ability to strike deep into enemy territory. Its story reminds us that technological balance and strategic vision often outweigh individual combat performance. The P-51 was not just a machine. It was a turning point in aerial warfare, proving that sometimes the aircraft that wins the war isn't the best dogfighter, but the best warfighter.